Web Marketing That Works podcast, episode 63, and our guest today is Jordan Harbinger from The Art of Charm.
Welcome to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. Come behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments and listen in as amazing guests confess the truth about what really works. Now, here are your hosts, Adam Franklin and Toby Jenkins.
I'm Adam Franklin, and you are listening to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. This is the show for people who love marketing on the web. You'll be taken behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments, and we'll look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. We confess what's failed and reveal the truth about what really works. The show is brought to you by our book, which is called Web Marketing That Works, and specifically it's brought to you by the 33 marketing templates that go with it. So you can get your hands on those at bluewiremedia.com.au/book. And today's guest, Jordan Harbinger from the Art of Charm podcast. It's huge. It's an absolutely huge podcast. He gets 1.3 million downloads per month. It's a top 50 iTunes podcast, and he's actually been running it since 2007. He's done over 370 episodes with more than 400 hours of audio training available for free. He's interviewed all the big names in the online and offline world, and he takes what he learns and holds boot camps and coaching sessions for predominantly men that want to learn the elements of emotional intelligence to become more confident, charismatic, and an all-round better version of themselves. It was really cool to chat to Jordan today because he doesn't consider himself a marketer, despite the fact that he has won over 1 million downloads on iTunes per month. And it's these accidental marketers or marketers who don't see themselves that way that I find so fascinating, because there's all these nuggets of wisdom that we can learn from them and apply to our own business. So there's plenty of great stuff in the show. I reckon we kick it off. Here's Jordan. It's Adam Franklin here, and on the line with me I have Jordan Harbinger. How are you, Jordan?
Hey, good. Glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
It's a pleasure. Now, whereabouts are you joining me from today?
I'm in San Francisco, California.
Wonderful. Now, your Art of Charm podcast is huge, and you are huge now, but what I like about your story is that it's been at least 8 years in the making. Can you tell us a bit about your journey to being the Art of Charm podcast host that we all know you as now? But let's start back at your college days. They sounded wild. Okay. Did you already know your way around charm, confidence, and charisma back then, or was that period your testing bed, so to speak?
Yeah, not at all. In fact, I was pretty much a shy, introverted guy in college, so I didn't really have... The reason my college days are wild is because I did a lot of traveling, but not because I was some sort of charmer in school. In fact, it wasn't until I was working on Wall Street and for a law firm there that I actually even had any sort of indication that this stuff would be important, and I didn't even try to start learning this stuff until then. I started really early with social engineering and sort of human hacking skills, but I never thought to apply them to social interactions other than for, computer security nerd stuff like that.
So what were some of the situations or moments in time that made you decide, yes, I can actually learn a lot about this and teach other people as well?
Sure. So I was working on Wall Street, and I had a mentor there named Dave. And by mentor, I mean he was just basically assigned to help me navigate my summer associate internship at this law firm, and he was never around. And the reason he was never around was because he was making all the money for the firm, basically. He was generating business. He made more money than the other partners. And so it was this really kind of interesting way of looking at work, because he was consistently outperforming the other partners in terms of earnings, but he was never in the office. I mean, I'd go in on a weekend and I'd see guys there at like 1 a.m. on a Saturday night, and I'd never even see Dave at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday. So there was something there that I didn't quite understand. And I finally got him to break it down for me a little bit. And it was essentially the idea that he was out making money, generating deals for the firm. And so he didn't care about his billable hours requirement. He didn't have to sit there drafting documents most of the time. He was out getting deals, and it was a much rarer skill set and therefore more highly compensated. Everybody knows it's all about who you know, but originally you kind of think, oh, well, that's how you get your foot in the door. What most people don't think about is that that's also how you get to the top. And people in corporate environments usually see this, but only when they're middle management or higher. And then it's kind of like, man, I wish I'd started building these relationships 30 years ago.
And so you then saw that and then thought, well, I'm going to learn these relationship skills, these interpersonal skills, rather than decide to split your life into billable 6-minute increments.
Right, exactly. So I can either outwork all the people that are willing to sacrifice pretty much everything in their whole life for another dollar. I can try to become the most highly technically skilled person in the entire corporation / in the whole market / industry, or I can have a really good network. And here's the thing. People don't realize that if you're highly technically skilled, there's always going to be somebody better than you. And even if there isn't, there's going to be somebody cheaper who can do similar quality of work, usually, right? So you plateau at a certain level. Your value taps out. You tap out at a certain level. If you're working really hard, you're actually racing to the bottom. Well, not if you're working really hard. If you're trying to outwork everyone else, if that's the value you bring to the table, you're actually racing to the bottom because other people will constantly be able to work more, which puts the hour, even at a high level of technical skill, puts your hours kind of at a commodity level. Does that make sense?
It does. And so how did you go about sharpening your skills in terms of these interpersonal relationship skills that you're known for now? What sort of things were you doing to really understand what made the difference in that area?
Well, before I address that, I want to separate why networking and people skills are actually more valuable. So
sure.
while hourly work is a race to the bottom, and while technical skill is something that's going to plateau, even if it plateaus high, networks are pretty much unique to the individual. Contacts are hard to come by, relationships are tough, and combinations of relationships and contacts are extremely rare. So networks and then people that control them, that really work well inside them, are rare and unique. And so somebody who has one is worth their weight in gold because they bring business to your organization based on that. And that's why salesmen are the highest compensated people in any organization, except for a lot of the C-suite level executives who are 35, 40 years older than those guys, right? A lot of the time. So you're going to see a lot of folks like that in the way that you work. And of course, people think, oh, well, I'm not a natural born salesman. Well, good. Then it gives you a chance to learn how this is done from the inside out and get better than the guys who are naturally born at it. So what I was doing was, as soon as I sort of understood, okay, this is how things work around here. This is Dave. This is how things operate. You know, this is the skill set that's going to get me ahead in law game. I never thought outside the law game. Then I need to learn people skills. I need to learn how to network and build relationships. And so I started Googling like any good nerd, and I found things like how to win friends and influence people and, you know, discussion forums about dating. And I read all this stuff and I thought, all right, I don't know if any of this stuff is true, so I'm going to test it. And so I found that a lot of the win friends and influence people and the Dale Carnegie courses and stuff like that, they were interesting, but they weren't necessarily nuanced enough to help. And a lot of the dating stuff online was, quite frankly, just baloney proffered by keyboard jockey kids who'd never gone on a date and 40-year-old virgins who wanted to sell ebooks online. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on your show, but that's the truth. And so I was testing everything I could find, and I found some stuff that worked and some stuff that didn't, intending, you know, my hacker brain said, let's break this. Let's break it. Let's see what we can do with it and break it. So I kept doing that, and I kept testing, and I ran into my now business partner, AJ, who is really good with, you know, dating and girls and things like that. We were 24 at the time, and he was even younger. And it was like, all right, let's mesh your skill set with my networking and people skills pursuit and newly budding skill set. And we decided after a while that we would test and break these things, and we saw massive overlap. And of course, us being in our 20s back then, we decided to marry the two skill sets and really go after it and started learning it. It became an obsession. It was really fun. And I don't just mean like sleep with as many girls as possible. I mean developing relationships, making friends with everybody, leveraging those things, introducing people to each other. I mean, that was what we were all about through our mid to late 20s, and it really starts to pay off in short order. But of course, now that people are paying us to learn these skills here at The Art of Charm, this is our livelihood, and we apply the same things. We practice what we preach, both in business and our personal relationships, and the results are tremendous.
And whose idea was the kangaroo suit, Jordan?
Oh, you heard about the kangaroo suit?
I did, yeah. Can you tell us through that? Was it a dare? Was it AJ's idea? Was it yours? Fill us in.
Actually, the reason that happened, it's kind of funny, because the reason that happened was I was going out a lot, and, you know, I thought like, okay, I'm going out a lot, but I'm kind of like hiding, you know, it's hard to start these interactions. And it became kind of a problem for me. I saw myself kind of hiding in the corner, if you will, proverbially anyway. And I realized, okay, if I start to dress or act in a way that doesn't allow me to hide, then this will change the game for me, because what it will do, of course, is make it so that I have to deal with the tension and that I have to interact with people. And so, the brainstorm came about on Halloween because we were going out in costume anyway. And then I just decided to wear the Halloween costume for like a month. And it worked really well, because you might be able to hide in the corner and not do anything if you are sitting there with a drink, dressed normal, sort of eyeballing people, pretending to be on your phone. But if you're dressed in a kangaroo suit, people are going to talk to you. You can't ignore them. You can't just pretend you're on the phone. People are touching you. They're grabbing you. Drunk people are playing with you. I mean, there's so many things going on. You start getting treated totally differently. You start getting treated like somebody who's running the room and highly social. So once the suit comes off, you actually, and it took me a while to realize this, of course, but once the suit comes off, you're the exact same person without the suit as you are with. You might not be openly as fun right in the beginning, but you can definitely bring that same vibe with you. And so that was what I started to carry with me for the rest of my interactions, was like, listen, the party's over here. I'm the guy who's running the interactions. Things are happening around me, not, I hope people don't think I'm weird and I can join them and they're fun. That's a bad mindset to have when you're out having fun and things like that. And of course, now I take it into the networking realm, where the same thought process, the same mindset is people will want to talk. People will want to interact. I can't just sit here and be ignored, because it's a waste of time and also it won't work. So let's just dive into it, right? With the kangaroo suit, there's no middle ground. If you're dressed like normal, you can blend in. With the kangaroo suit, or any suit for that matter, any animal suit will do, there's no blending in. You have to lean in or you have to run home. And running home, you admit defeat. Leaning into it, you learn.
And now you take these lessons from those days in the kangaroo suit and you train people, mostly men, but on their relationships and their interpersonal skills and everything else. But you've also got a really lovely business model, in my eyes, in that you've got so much content that's generous and helpful and free. You give away a huge amount of content. First part of the question is, how does your company make money? And the second part is, what percentage of your content would you give away for free?
How does my company make money?
How does your company?
We make money by, obviously, product sales, live training programs in Los Angeles, where people come in from all over the world to learn from us as coaches. And then a small part of that would be ad revenue from our podcast, which has 1.3 million downloads a month. So that ad revenue property is great, but it's not, I definitely wouldn't want to be like, scrap it all, let's just sell ads. That's not happening anytime soon. So we make the bulk of our money on our live programs and online products. So
I know, but what percentage of your material do you give away for free, like in terms of the podcast and your blog articles, versus what you, I guess, save to generate your revenue?
It's funny. Actually, people have never really asked me this, but it makes perfect sense that somebody in your position would. I give away all of the information, essentially, that I have that's relevant to the general public for free, because it's not the information that causes change. What causes change is habits, feedback, coaching, and training. That's what causes change. I mean, people can read all the books they want about riding a motorcycle, but would you read a book about riding a motorcycle and then go, I got this, I'm going to take this thing down I-75, which is a highway in the United States. I don't expect you to know that. I mean, would you ever do that? No, you would never do that. You would take a class, you'd have someone show you how to ride it, because that would be completely different. In fact, you could probably learn just from the person showing you without reading the book at all, right?
Absolutely.
So the training is what's key. So hiding information is sort of the realm of, and I mean no offense, internet marketers, because they only really have information to convey. Whereas what we do, we're a training company. So you can have all of our information, but it won't do you a bit of good unless you're applying it with somebody else who can help you apply it correctly. Otherwise, you're just kind of flying blind and hoping that the manual you read on flying the airplane was up to date.
That's right. Yeah, there's infinite amounts of information on Google, but you're right. Information doesn't cause change. It's the action that you need to actually do yourself to learn. Which brings me to a question. What's your philosophy on web marketing, Jordan?
Web marketing? Well, I mean, I think it's important. Anybody who says, I don't need web marketing, my content stands on its own, is broke, right? So people say that, or they used to say that about podcasts as well. Like, you know what, to get your show out there, you just need to have good content. Those days are over, man. Those days are over. Whether you're a book writer, a magazine publisher, speaking of broke, or any kind of content publisher, you have to market at least moderately well because your content will go viral via word of mouth if you're lucky, but that's not going to be sustainable business. And that's best case scenario, right? Best case scenario is your stuff is so good that people talk about you, but they're not going to keep talking about you because other people are tooting their horn right in that person's face. It's impossible to do that now. That's why even people look at politicians. They might have great policies. They're famous. They've got tons of money. They have everything they need to do their job. CEOs, anybody, any company. I mean, there's companies out there that make amazing things. They advertise anyway. Look at Apple. Those are some of the best computers out there, debatably, right? Do they advertise? Yeah, everywhere. Everywhere they advertise. And part of that's brand recognition and cool factor, et cetera. But essentially, if you're not doing the same thing for your business, then you're leaving so much money on the table. And most people who say, I don't need to do that, my content stands on its own, what they're really saying is, web marketing is so confusing, I don't even want to touch it, so I'm going to rationalize that I don't need it.
And they can't monetize it as well.
Yeah, of course. They can't monetize it, so they're just going, I'm good. I'm going to bury my head in the sand on this one. And I've been guilty of that. We didn't use an email list for a long time because we're like, we don't care. We're not internet marketers. We got a podcast, and it's awesome. And now I'm like, man, we would have so many more people on this list if we had started years and years ago. We're literally just a few months into really earnestly trying to figure it out. And luckily, we have awesome connections now. Like, I literally have Noah Kagan, founder of AppSumo, just hanging out and going, oh, I'll install everything for you and split test it for you so I can use it as a case study. Because Art of Charm does have a ton of traffic. So we have that to leverage. But literally, had we started this 8 years ago and we'd started the show, I'd be having this conversation with you from my jet.
Now, Jordan, running a business on the web is a strange beast. On one hand, you're safely tucked away behind your microphone or behind your computer screen. Yet at the same time, once your work is published, it's out there for the world to see and for people to judge and criticize. And this can be a very scary and confronting place because you're vulnerable. How can we learn to overcome the fear and then handle the rejection and criticism that's inevitable as we publish stuff to the web?
That's translation. How do you deal with haters, right?
Oh, partly, yeah. And the fear that stops people. Like so many, first part is like, yeah, getting over that hurdle to actually have the guts to put something online. And then, of course, if you're consistent and get better at it, you're eventually going to get haters. Yeah, so finish it off with how do you handle the haters?
Yeah, I love you for asking this question. Nobody ever asks this, and I think it's funny because it's like, guys, I put controversial stuff out there that's highly personal every time I record a show, and no one has ever asked me that question on a show anyway, which I think is funny. I deal with this all the time. Every single day, I get fan mail and I get anti-fan mail, if I can use that term. There's always somebody who has a problem with either the way we do business, something I said on a show gets misconstrued. I mean, you can, and the problem is, here's one pitfall, I should say, that a lot of people find. If you put something out on the web, let me back up the truck. Getting the guts to put something out there in the first place, you're going to face a little bit of rejection, but you should be doing it for you and not for other people. Do it for you. And yes, if it's marketing, it's for other people, but that's a different thing. You're not going to become a marketer unless you can face some rejection because essentially you're a salesperson. But if you're putting yourself out there, like podcast, blog, writing, anything like that, a book, anything, you have to be comfortable with rejection. And that's easier said than done. And we literally, that's what the Art of Charm teaches, right? Confidence, how to deal with those types of negative input and stay positive in spite of that. I got 400 hours of that up online. But the key really is you have to be blatantly aware that you're never going to please anyone. And as long as you're doing it for yourself, then it doesn't effing matter what other people think. Now, the truth of the matter is it does matter if you want them to buy something from you. But if you have no outcome in mind, if you're not outcome dependent when you start your business, you'll have no problem putting something out there because it won't matter what people think. And besides, it's never going to be as bad as you think it could be. Now, that said, if you get 100 pieces of mail a day and one of them is like, you're a jerk and everyone hates you, and then you get 99 that are like, I love you and thanks for changing my life, you will focus on that one guy. And I don't know what the psychological concept is. Somebody can email me that. I've definitely read about this, but it is sort of a negative cognitive bias where you just look at the one dude. I got an email the other day. This woman said, you're a misogynistic son of a bitch. Shame on you. And it literally came after 5 other emails, also from women that are like, your show is so great. I love it. I shared it with my husband. I shared it with my son. Another woman said, I want to send my 2 boys to your program. Another woman sent her husband through the program. Another woman is putting it on her blog and citing the show and saying, look at this great body of work. This guy's making better men. And I got one from a woman who said I was a misogynistic son of a bitch. And in the first line of the email, she said, yes, I'm a feminist, and yes, I'm really insecure about a lot of things, but that's not what's driving this email, so read on. That was the first line, and I should have just closed it from there, but I didn't. And I read that, and I was like, damn, and I felt a little bit bad about it. And then I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't even make sense. There's nothing in my intention that is this way. And I got tons of other email today alone from people in the exact same demographic that disagree with that completely, and their actions are speaking louder than this woman's words. So you will face that, and you just have to remember, listen, if you're getting 100 pieces of email and 99 of them are, you should be ashamed of yourself, yeah, maybe re-examine your content. If you're getting 99 pieces or 9 pieces of email a week, a month, a year, and one of them says something negative, just realize that there's always going to be somebody out there that doesn't like what you're doing. Take it as a friggin' compliment that you're reaching a wide enough audience and demographic to have reached these internet trolls that have nothing better to do than rain on your parade. Because there's always going to be some. I get it every single day, but I get more positive than I do negative, and I just try to serve the people that are going to be the ones that like what I'm doing. And I'll tell you what, no one's ever going to buy anything from you if they don't like you, but the people that don't like you are always going to be a smaller percentage. You know, I got an email today from some yutz who was like, I got a text from your assistant after I requested a call about program information. How dare you text me? It's so impersonal. And I remember going to myself, why on earth would that offend a reasonable, rational human being? My assistant texted him to schedule a phone call to deliver information about our live programs, which he requested. And since she didn't call and leave a voicemail, but instead sent a text, which hundreds of other people have appreciated and responded to right away, he decided to get offended enough to actually write an email about it and CC'd our whole company. And I just thought, you're just trying to get somebody in trouble. Like, look at you. This is pathetic. And if you realize that and you start to think that other people might be the issue here, as long as you're taking a rational eye to it and keeping your eye open for critical feedback that's constructive, you can ignore a lot of this BS coming from other people. Because I'll tell you what, it doesn't get better as you get more well-known. It does not. You get a wider swathe of feedback, you get more of each, but it doesn't go away, and it never will. If you're pissing people off, as the old cliche goes, you're doing something right. It just means you're congratulations. You're well known enough to have a successful business and a bunch of people that don't like you for absolutely no effing reason.
Oh, that's awesome, Jordan. Thanks. I'm loving this interview. Now, on the flip side, publishing information or content on the web can also be very gratifying and rewarding, especially because you can have an impact on people all around the world and on people that you've never met. Now, what does confidence, charm, and charisma look like in the online world?
Well, essentially, in the online world, you're a good interviewer, Adam Franklin. What charisma looks like in the online world is completely different and yet so similar in so many ways to what it looks like in the real world. Of course, in the real world, you're looking at like body language and vocal tonality and eye contact. But in the online world, podcasting, sure, I've got vocal tonality and I've got other things like that that can communicate in that particular way. But when you're talking about something written, tone is still there. In fact, you have to emote even more, because in order to get people to like and trust you, they have to be able to feel some of the same feelings that you're having, right? And so when I'm podcasting, I very rarely take a really logical tact, even though my shows are very heavily leaned into the practical, the real actionable stuff that guys can do, and girls for that matter can do to improve in their life. I love to really be passionate. As you can tell, I love to really let it go, because worst case scenario, I just come across as a little bit weird. And I'm cool with that, right? But as long as people can feel some of the things that I'm feeling, that's a win. If you're writing, dump your passion and your emotion into it. And I know that's crummy advice because it's highly inactionable. I'm not a writer. But if you're podcasting, I would say, forget the fake radio voice. Talk about stuff you're interested in. Lean into it. Have a friggin' glass of scotch if you need to. In fact, I wish I'd poured one before I started here. But, have a glass of scotch if you need to, or whatever your beverages of choice, and just start talking. I mean, the Art of Charm podcast, the original shows, and in fact, many of the shows since then, have been recorded under the influence of a little bit of booze. And that's actually been a really good thing for our show, because people drink with us, they hang out with us, they know that what we're saying isn't totally censored. And honestly, coming out and saying something a little bit ridiculous or a little bit off the cuff, we never edit that stuff out because it comes across so much more genuine. And that's my second point, I guess, is authenticity and genuine emotion. Don't try to be like, hey, welcome everybody to the Art of Charm. I'm your host. That's fake. Nobody can relate to that. It's a mask. It's a mask. And what we want to do is take the mask off. You know, if I'm starting a show and I say, man, I'm having a rough friggin' day. Someone stole the package outside my house. My cat freaking spilled my coffee on my laptop. I don't know if that thing's going to survive. I don't have time to go get a new one, let alone do I want to spend money on it. I'm just freaking pissed. You know, people will be like, man, yeah, I've been there. But if I'm on there and I'm like, blah, 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 everything's great because my life never has bad days, people are like, I can't identify with this Yahoo. Why do I want to listen to him talk for an hour every week? I don't. And people only buy things from people and do business with and engage with people they like and trust. So if you want to run a business online, you better be likable and trustable. And the way to do that is not to make sure you're awesome at all times and always have a smile on. That's just weird. Be you. But be you and turn the volume up a little because we can't see you. Sometimes we can't hear you. You know, we need to be able to feel you in some way. And the best way to do that is by dumping as much emotion as you can into whatever medium you're using.
Nice. Now, the internet is also full of scammy, opportunistic BS artists.
What? Really? Are you sure?
Apparently, that's what I've heard. And I think marketers are the worst culprits. Now, I mean, we can usually tell this by looking at their website and reading their copy. But what I would like to know from you, Jordan, is what is it about what they're doing that is just so wrong in how they project themselves?
You know, it's funny you should mention that because my friend just sent me this really dumb video. I won't mention the company because, like, the last thing you want to do is give these guys any more props than they should, like, PR than they should have. But it was like, learn to get the rock-hard chiseled body that alpha males have. And it shows like a SWAT team guy kicking in a door and like shooting. And it's like a dude who's sculpted. And I'm just like, the people that look at this and buy this are complete morons. But the thing is, it's easy to judge something like that and be like, I would never fall for that. That's ridiculous. But we fall and buy into marketing every day, whether it's cheesy or not. And it's all, a lot of it is subconscious anyway, and stuff that's really far below our level of intellect, like that dumb video, we call out right away. But there's tons of other stuff out there that's much more subtle, much more subconscious, viral, whatever you want to call it. And so I think for one of the biggest mistakes that marketers are doing, right, is they're trying to be, again, turning up the emotion to 11, but doing it in an inauthentic way. And so they kind of have half the equation. And that's a problem, right? That's a big problem because if you look at some of the biggest influencers, they're some of the most sort of brutally honest people. They're some of the most authentic people, generally speaking. And we love celebrities that do this too, right? Like, what's that girl's name? I think she was in like, she's Katniss in that movie, The Hunger Games. You know who I'm talking about?
I don't, but I'm sure listeners will.
They will, right? And she goes on these interviews and they're like, oh my God, you've just exploded on the scene and you're in this massive movie and you're in all these cool movies with Bradley Cooper. You're just so amazing. And she's like, I know, sometimes it's really funny. I just don't even realize what's happening. It's like, I feel like I won the lottery. Why me? I'm just out there having fun. I don't know what everyone's making such a big deal out of it. And everyone's like, we love you even more now because you're not full of yourself and you're just talking about how fun it is and not, you know, when you talk to another actor or you see an athlete or something like that, they're just like, yeah, it was really great, you know, working with this whole crew. They're just all stars. And then you hear the backstory and it's like, everyone thought you were an a-hole. No one likes you. But everybody likes the authentic person. And so marketers are having trouble doing that because they feel like authenticity doesn't stand out enough. But I would wager that that's short game, right? They're thinking, yeah, maybe authenticity doesn't stand out well enough if you're trying to get Facebook click-through conversions. But if you're trying to build a long-term audience that loves you and therefore loves whatever you're offering, then you need to be yourself because that sort of like high energy, boom, 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 kick in the door, start shooting, sell me this supplement for six-pack abs, that works for 10 minutes that the guy's like, whoa, I need that. And after that, they're like, what? But if you want to play the long game, be yourself. It's with that old cliche, everyone else is already taken. And people ask me often, how do you drive the brand, the Art of Charm? And it's like they think there's some amazing secret recipe where I'm like, this is trendy and this is cool and this is also popular in search results. And I never do that. I've seen other people see little bursts for a second and then fall back down because they guess right one day and wrong the next. The way that the Art of Charm brand is driven is me and AJ send each other stupid crap on the internet, and then we send each other interesting crap on the internet, and we go, whoa, this is actually really interesting. Have you read this? Yeah, I read that. That was cool. We should totally interview that guy. Cool. So we go and we get some guy who wrote something that we thought was cool. We bring him on the show. We have an interesting conversation. And lo and behold, we're not the only people who think that way. But we can make something like that even more interesting and entertaining by virtue of the conversation. And boom, instant viral classic podcast. But people who are looking for that, they go, I need to make an outrageous claim, back it up with something ridiculous, add some visuals and an explosion and a dude walking away slowly with a kitten, and boom, instant marketing. That can work for a second, but you cannot continually repeat it because it's just short game. And a lot of internet marketers do that, and a lot of them make a lot of money. But I guess the truth is, do you want to leave a legacy and make a great business, or do you just want to get somebody's money and then run away with it before they can ask for a refund? And that's really kind of the difference in marketers. And I know your audience is probably on the up and up white hat guys who really want to help people. And the way to do that, honestly, is to use the stuff that helped you, not lie to people and tell them that this is going to help them because you need the money. If that's the case, just go sell something else. You're always going to have opportunities.
Great. Thanks for that. And I personally love your networking and business relationship themed shows on the Art of Charm. And I've listened to many of them on my Sunday long runs. And as a result of actually implementing some of your stuff, I've found myself invited into a mastermind group. So on one hand, thank you for your input. My question is, in an online world, how do we develop meaningful business relationships when live in-person contact is so rare?
You know, that's a great question too, because a lot of times people try to build relationships only online. And I mean, the problem is honestly that it's possible, but it's tough. You know, it's possible, but it's an uphill battle. Why only email people back and forth? Like, yeah, I've got great relationships, or I should say I have some relationships with people back and forth on various online services, email, whatever, but I always want to meet those people. And before I'll do any substantial deal, I want to meet those people. Absolutely. Because it's really easy to put up a front online, especially in a written communication. I mean, and you as a show host, I'm sure you've read plenty of material from somebody who should be just absolutely fascinating. They're a fascinating writer. And then you get them in front of a microphone and you're like, oh my God, did somebody drug me? This is the most boring thing in the world. I'm falling asleep. You know, and the reason that I need that face-to-face is because, and perhaps it's just me, but I don't think so, I need to be able to see, hear everything from this person. I want the authentic picture. I don't want them edited. I don't want the cut this, cut that out, cool guy image. I want the real deal. And it doesn't have to be amazing. I just want to know what I'm getting. And the only way to do that is face-to-face. So if you're building relationships with people online, the most obvious tip I would give is try to have more phone conversations, whether they're by Skype, use the video element. I never really do that. I always opt for in-person communication. I don't mean I don't use Skype, phone, or email, but I always go, oh, you're having an event in September? Awesome. I'd love to attend. And you'd be surprised. I mean, if you're networking with people that are having events and things like that, a lot of the time you can ask and say, hey, I'd love to come to that. And if you're in their target demo, they might offer you a deal. And if you're a sort of person who can add value to that, you'd be surprised. I just started doing this the last few years, or several years, I should say. And people go, oh, I had no idea you'd be interested in coming to this. Yeah, I'll fly you out here. Do you want to give a speech? And I'd say, yeah, absolutely. And I'd say, why didn't you ask me that before? And they'll go, I don't know. I just figured you would be too busy or wouldn't be interested. You'd be very surprised at where opportunities come from. And a lot of times people think you're too busy for them. And meanwhile, you're thinking, this is the opportunity I've been waiting for. So always do face-to-face wherever possible. Yes, it costs money. You have to book a plane flight. You've got to go there, get a hotel. It costs a lot of money. But what are the relationships worth to you? Is it a business relationship? If so, it's probably worth more than the few grand you'd spend flying out there to meet those people. In fact, what you could do once you get good at this is organize the meetup or the event yourself, and then everybody will fly to you. It's a lot cheaper.
I like it. Now, part two of the interview, Jordan, is where I like to look at marketing experiments. And you've obviously worn a kangaroo suit as part of an experiment to see what it was like to put yourself out there and attract attention in bars 10 or so years ago. And you strike me as someone who's done plenty of online testing, whether it's been deliberate or not. But would you be able to share a couple of stories with us Firstly, something that's worked really well.
You know, something, because I'm far from a marketer, at least not on purpose, right? So for me, it's different because, yes, I am a marketer. I just didn't know I was for a long time, for several years.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah, right. So I never started this show as a business. It was because I was too lazy to write a blog, and I love talking. Surprise, as if you didn't notice. So for me, I would say look for your desired medium, because a lot of people I know, really good marketers, they do things like, yeah, you know, I'm writing sales copy and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. Or they're podcasters that go, yeah, well, you know, I can podcast, but I'm not much of an XYZ, and that could be writer or video guy or something like that. And I myself thought, I don't do video. I like being behind the microphone. I don't write stuff. I hire that out. I started writing. I love it. I don't have a lot of time for it, but when I do, I really enjoy it. I obviously love podcasting. And then I had somebody set up quick and painless video filming, and I put quick and painless in air quotes because there's no such thing as quick and painless video filming. And I started to do it, and I was like, oh, I love being in front of the camera. I look like crap. I need to lose some weight and, you know, get a friggin' haircut because I look like a ugly Cheeto. But, you know, when I get that all wrapped up, this is really fun delivering content in front of the camera. I can't wait to do more of this. So it gets exciting, and you find your preferred medium or media, and you just go after it. A lot of people pigeonhole themselves, and it's like, well, why can't you write this? Why can't you film this? Why can't you start your own show? You totally can, and you should. And sometimes it won't work. Other times, you know, you'll find the love of your life in terms of the preferred medium or something that really makes you happy. And sometimes that hobby, if it starts out as such, will turn into a multi-million-dollar business.
Sweet. And so how about stuff that's not worked as well? What's failed? Have there been any dead set shockers? Are there any stories you can share with us there?
You know what? Something this isn't necessarily a marketing initiative, but a lot of startups run into it. If you're comfortable with me just going off the marketing train for a second.
Absolutely.
What I've seen, you know, every startup does this. Well, I shouldn't say. I'm in San Francisco. These startups don't do it. They're funded. A lot of sort of mom and pop startup-y type places do this, and it's almost unavoidable. But don't hire your friends if you can avoid it. And if you do, make sure they know it's not a permanent position, because here's the dilemma. Hiring your friends turns into a huge problem, because normally you would let people go the second there's malfeasance or bad work ethic or bad work product. But if they're your friends, it's a lot harder to do. And people are going, I know not to hire my friends, you idiot. Jordan, whatever, man. You sound like an amateur. Obviously, I'd never hire my friends. Well, here's the problem. When you're starting a company and you need somebody to do a $70,000 a year job and you have $40,000 to pay them, who is the person that would do that? The people that believe in you the most, the people that believe in your vision the most. We're talking about what? Friends and family, right? Mm-hmm. Very few others are going to be able to step into that role who are qualified and are willing to take a massive hit in the short term. So you need to work this out. And unfortunately, the person who's right for you in the short term in the beginning is almost certainly not the person who's going to be right for you long term. It's a near certainty. And so, of course, people don't want to work for cheap and then get dumped as soon as there's money on the table, but you need to have an existing agreement that shows you exactly how the out's going to look. And I'll tell you right now, even that's going to screw up your friendship, because if somebody's got a deal where once you hit 7 figures, they're going to take, you know, $150K back pay plus interest and bail, they're going to go, wait, no, I want to stay in and make more money. It's always going to ruin the relationship. So you really have to think hard about that. And I've definitely burned a few friendships unintentionally in the past by hiring those people to work for the Art of Charm. Now, retrospectively, a lot of those people are still awesome friends, but there's definitely a lot more that, you know, became friends when they worked here and are no longer a part of the company. And it becomes really tough. So a lot of times you have to make the choice. So given the choice between hiring your friends and working like that and borrowing money to incur a lot of debt, I would always go the debt route at least as early as you can. Because a lot of times what you need are friends to prove the concept. And then before you get too big and there's too much money on the table, buy them out, even if you have to take a loan to do it. Because otherwise you're going to destroy those relationships. Mark my words.
All right. Thank you. All right. Just before that, the closing question, I just want to ask a personal question, particularly for me and for other podcasters who are looking to grow their own shows. The question relates to mastering the art of asking guests questions. For example, do you go in super prepared and you already know the answers to the questions you're about to ask, but you want to ask it anyway so your listeners can benefit? Or do you go in less prepared and really curious? Or do you just roll in with no set agenda and let the conversation flow? Is there a key that you've learned from your experience with the art of charm that other podcasters can learn from?
Yeah, actually, it's funny you should mention that. I've evolved this process over years, so bear in mind that this comes with 8 years of broadcasting experience as a professional here. So, like, if you're new, prepare, and over-prepare, and then let the conversation flow as naturally as you can while retaining control of the direction of the conversation. Easier said than done. Otherwise, you're going to have tangents. You're going to go all over the place. Your guest is going to run you over. Once you get more experience, require preparation from the guest, because guests who think, I talk about this all the time, I can totally do this, totally can't do it, especially for your show, your niche, your audience. So make them prepare, use the prep to guide the show. Do not stick to the script. If you come in as curious and hungry as possible, you're coming in with that beginner mind that most of your audience already has. So if you've read all the prep and you've read the book and this and that, you can have an advanced conversation with an author. But I would say don't read the book, because if you do, you're going to start from level 3, and most of your audience who has no background in that is going to be like, what is going on here? And they're going to struggle to keep up, and they'll probably turn the show off. So if you come in with sort of a beginner's mind, a newbie mind, but you have points that are salient and interesting to guide the conversation for if things get stale or if you need to take it somewhere, that's the key. That's the key balance. But during most shows, I never even look at the prep. I look in the beginning, I see 4 or 5 things I want to hit, and I put it away.
Thank you. That is very, very valuable. So finally, have you got any closing thoughts or final pieces of advice or anything you want to get off your chest before we close this interview?
No, I mean, definitely this is a podcast, of course. If you listen to podcasts, I hope you'll like mine. It's The Art of Charm. Or you can email me. I'm jordan@theartofcharm.com. I read everything, and I'm happy to show people. I love helping people out. I love people getting introduced to our content. So check out the podcast, and if you have questions beyond that, I'm all ears. Awesome,
Jordan. Thank you so much for joining us today, and you have yourself a great night.
Thank you.
Cheers. See ya. And that's a wrap for my chat with Jordan Harbinger. If you don't already listen to the Art of Charm podcast, I personally recommend it. As I said in the show, it's the business relationships and networking episodes that I particularly enjoy, but there's all sorts of different topics that he covers in the 400 hours of audio training there, so definitely check it out. What I learned out of that chat with Jordan was the whole idea of, putting your work out there for people to see and to judge and to criticize, but really to overcome those fears and to try and realize that, yes, partly it's for you to help clarify your thinking and to learn to deal with that fear of potential rejection, but also to be putting stuff out there online that's helpful to other people, that shares what you've learned, that shares some of your personality, and hopefully the right types of people will be attracted to that. But also, I liked how he gave us some coping mechanisms for if and when you get to that point where there's haters or people that disagree with your message or your philosophy, then understanding that that is a necessary evil, I guess, in the long-term journey that we're all progressing along. I loved how he wore the kangaroo suit out to the bars in New York. I think Australians listening to this podcast will understand, how much fun it is on those fancy dress parties or what have you, and there's always attention, it's always a lot of fun. It breaks down a lot of social barriers, and that it's a lot easier just to talk to people when you both look stupid in whatever silly costume it is you're wearing. It's quite a tradition, obviously, in Australia. Maybe not quite so much overseas, but interesting that Jordan did that, but not with the comfort of everybody else being in fancy dress, but he was the only one. And I'm led to believe he went to quite a few swanky bars around the place dressed up like that, so it would have just been hilarious to have been a fly on the wall for all of that. Now, there were plenty of other questions I would love to have asked Jordan had we had enough time, but tons and tons of value there. I really appreciated him sharing those tips on the podcasting questions, because it's something that I've been grappling with as I've done more and more of these podcast shows, is how much do you prepare? And if you know all the answers to the questions that you've had to ask the guest, how does that impact the flow of the conversation? And do you end up giving away the punchline and not allowing the guest to share that? And I've just been reflecting on a few of my more recent shows and just thinking, how could I have actually worded that better? And I think it's often when I've known the guests better than the guests that I haven't known, that I kind of want to be able to demonstrate that I'm prepared and I know a lot about them, but I think partly in doing so, I've stolen their thunder or trampled over their lines a bit and not had quite as good an experience for the listener. Now, of course, that's me being overly critical of my own work, but I was really fascinated to hear that Jordan, in the early days, did tons of preparation, but lets the conversation flow as naturally as possible. So that's going to be something that I strive to do. I think it's improving, but I'd love to hear your feedback. Any suggestions you might have, positive and negative, would be much appreciated. You can reach me, as always, on email, adam.franklin@bluewiremedia.com.au, and also on Twitter, @Franklin_Adam. I hope you found the podcast full of actionable advice. If you enjoyed the show, and I hope you did, I would love it if you could leave us an honest review on iTunes. Thank you for listening all the way to the end, and I look forward to seeing you next time.